Hey y'all, and welcome to this week's From the Vault episode from the Magdalen House podcast. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Dallas, Texas, and known affectionately by many as Maggies. Every first and third Wednesday, we bring you a new release, and our From the Vault episodes, we share podcast releases from our 3 different podcast series, Recover Ed, Recovered, Interviews with Alcoholics, and Hope for the Family. Our podcasts aim to connect, inspire, and educate alcoholics, loved ones, and the community to the Magdalen House and the services we offer. We are so glad that you're here. Thanks for listening.
I'm super excited about our guest today. She is one of the OG Next Step graduates from whenever Next Step first happened. She is super involved with overnighting and sponsoring and just has a lot of experience to share and just a heart for helping others and the mission of the Magdalen House. So Vicki, if you don't mind just starting off giving us a little bit of background information about yourself and what led you to getting sober.
Good morning, ladies. My name is Vicki, and I am a grateful, miraculously recovered alcoholic. My sobriety date is September 12th, 2019. I went through the house twice, amongst other tours of treatment centers around the country. Outpatients, this, that, the other, left, right, upside down. If this will give you any kind of indication, in 1998 was my first sobriety day, and I was sober in 1998 for 6 years. However, when I say sober, I don't really know. Obviously, my alcoholism had not progressed to where it got to there towards the end of my drinking this go round. But at that point, I stayed sober. My kids were little, and I stayed sober by going to meetings. And at that time, it did it for me. I stayed busy. My children were all involved in athletics and different things. And I just stayed really busy with 4 small kids and going to 7:30 AA meetings every single morning. And that was my gig. And I was happy, and my kids were sure happy. My youngest daughter was 4 at that time. And 6 years later, she was 10 when I got drunk again. And she was like, what is this? She had no memory of my being a drunk, no memory of any of those things about me that were so unpleasant, to put it mildly. And so it goes. I mean, I don't know how much you want me to tell my background. I was the youngest, or am the youngest of 3 girls. One's a lawyer, one's a very successful businesswoman in Nashville, Tennessee, and then there was me. So I really fed off of that a lot. I was the youngest, I was the black sheep, and that was okay. And I will go back a little bit, though. I was trying to think of this the other morning because, growing up, I grew up in New Orleans. We moved to New Orleans when I was in my 12, I think. I had my first drink of alcohol at 14. I didn't drink alcoholically right out of the gate, but I do remember my first drink, so perhaps that is some type of indication of what was to come. But also, that same particular night, I had a date with a guy that I was head over heels in love with. So I'm thinking, well, maybe that was part of the reason why I remember that drink. But I do remember him saying to me, we were at a Mardi Gras parade on Lee Circle. He said, hey, what kind of beer do you want? I was 14, probably hadn't a clue, but I did remember back. I had to be cool about it, right? So I remembered that my dad had drank Budweiser. So I was like, I think I'll have a Budweiser. And I did. Did I really like the taste of it? I don't know. But I drank it, obviously. And then I'm sure I had another one, but that was probably it for that night. As my drinking progressed, I went to a real crazy, wild high school. It was a small Episcopal school God, I hated going to religion every week. I hated going to the classes. I hated going to chapel. I hated everything that had to do with religious activities. Because at school, everybody there drank, and everybody, I say everybody there smoked weed. I didn't smoke weed because it was illegal. I had some kind of moral compass back then, right? I didn't smoke dope because it was illegal. But at 14, I was more than happy to imbibe in alcohol. And so it went. And yeah, my senior year, we would leave on at lunch and go drink. And I just was joining in the party, you know me. And at that time, I could be a chameleon because I tried to think like, during that time, I really did like everybody. I truly did. I don't think that's some kind of self delusion. I don't, I could get along with everybody. And I had empathy for people that were in different situations. Like maybe they were in the nerdy group, or maybe they were in this group, or whatever. That I could get along with all of those types of people. And somewhere along the line, I went from really trying to be a good friend and to be kind to people to truly hating people. I went from loving people to somewhere along in the line of life, I hated people. And I think this happened in college when my boyfriend of 7 years broke up with me. Suddenly, I hated everyone and everything. And now, granted, I went to LSU, which was a big old party school. So there I go again. Woohoo, you know. But it wasn't so much of a woohoo. It was like a lot of, waking up in places I didn't know where I was. I didn't care where I was. I was so sad and depressed about this breakup that my drinking really, really escalated then. So I somehow graduated from college, but not by going to class. I can guarantee you that. There was a lot of cheating and a lot of, no dosing the night before. But somehow I got out of school. At that point, I became a flight attendant. Well, that was another job that was really cool if you like to drink. So I did a lot of drinking then. And during that time, I got married at the age of 23, I think 24. I don't remember. But I remember meeting my husband to be, and he was 10 years older than myself. And I remember thinking, like, I don't really know if I'm in love with this man, but I think this man is a nice person. And I think this man is a good person. So perhaps I can learn to be this type of person by being with this person. So long and the short of it is, I got married. Of course, had this big wedding, and all I remember was getting so involved in that the person kind of didn't matter who the person was. It was just a person that. And I remember telling my parents, who were so against it, because he was 10 years older and had 2 kids from a previous marriage. Now, why that? I guess I was their baby girl, whatever. I don't know. But they really were not for that one bit, and weren't for it throughout my whole marriage, because I had my parents fooled into thinking that he was the reason for my drinking. If I could just get away from him, I wouldn't drink the way that I did, which was so twisted, because quite frankly, for a lot of years, he was a stable parent in my 23-year marriage with 4 kids. I remember all through that time as well, if I could just have another baby, then maybe I wouldn't drink like this. I just had this insatiable, everything was not enough. I was never satisfied. Nothing was enough. You do this for me. Well, you know what? Screw you. You didn't do it the right way. And you didn't give me the right washer and dryer. You got me that nasty old, whatever it's called, Sears version. I wanted the this, whatever. So, and believe me, later on in my drinking, I didn't have a washer and dryer. I was lucky to have a roof over my head, which that was barely. And quite frankly, the more I dug, I didn't have a bottom. I could accept wherever I ended up, was perfectly acceptable to me and I could adapt to it. So my kids saw me as a drunk. Well, guess what? That's who I am. And so maybe I'll try to behave today, or maybe I'll try to whatever. And then I would resent my kids for catching me in action or hiding my evidence, or no, not hiding, finding my evidence that I had so carefully hidden and presenting that to their dad. And then I got pissed at them. How dare you, one in particular, how dare you, do this to me? Now you're getting me in trouble. And this is a 5-year-old child. How sick is that? So I will go back to my parents were amazed, especially my dad, not my mother. My mother didn't like me. My dad adored me. No matter what I did, he was going to help me out of it. He was going to get me out of it. And I don't mean necessarily money wise. I just meant he was going to figure out some way. And one time he said, Vicki, if it wasn't for bad luck, you wouldn't have any luck at all. And I was like, yes, now I've got him believing that I'm just a case of a lifetime of bad luck. Forget all these shitty choices I was making, left and right, and selfish and all about me. And, if only the world would behave, if only this person would do this. I mean, I would say classic examples. I'm sure a lot of us were of 60 to 63. If only the world would behave. If only you would do this the way I want you to do it. Well, again, I was raised a baby of 3 girls. My 2 sisters, one's 10 years older, one's 7 years older. So I was pretty much raised kind of like an only child. And so I could get away with a lot. And my dad and I had a very special bond. Both of his parents were alcoholics. So he was always there trying to help, trying to catch me when I fell. That worked for a while until introduced him what at the time I called the Antichrist of Alcoholics Anonymous, Al-Anon. So my parents start going to Al-Anon, and slowly but surely, my mother's really getting it. My dad's kind of, on the fence, I guess, a little bit, but, he pretty much kicked it in gear. And at that point, it was either, you do this or we're done. You do that or we're done. Well, I was always good at, I'm sure a lot of us were manipulating. I can manipulate. Well, look, I promise you, it'll be different this time. 8 treatment centers later, the first treatment center I went to I was so not ready. I don't even know for sure that I was a full-blown alcoholic then. I think I might have been a heavy drinker. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But I agreed to go to get the people off my back. Well, I went to this treatment center where all I did was go in the exercise room, run a few miles a day, because I could still run then and drink. I was still a big exerciser then. I could do kickboxing, all these different things. And but yet, still drinking. I don't know how. I guess because I was young then, my body could somehow figure out a way to make it work. But I don't know how I got off on that tangent. So I'll stop, Stephanie. I'm sure you're trying to stop me. You know how I have this constantly running mouth.
Oh my gosh.
I'm happy to be quiet for you to ask me something pertinent about why I'm here this morning.
Well, thank you so much. That was a very, very great background. Does anybody have any questions for Vicki? Okay. I have a question. So I loved how you talked about, while you were talking about in your background, not just about your drinking, but your selfishness and your illness, like your spiritual illness and, the manipulating and all of that, because that paints a really good picture of who we are before we get here. Because of that, I would love for you to talk about maybe the 4-step and your experience with the 4-step and when it was that you came to maybe realize all of that about yourself. Because I'm sure at the time you didn't think that you were all of these things.
So I will say this, somewhere in there I left out that I worked in a treatment center for 2 years that taught the disease concept of alcoholism. So I taught that, and I'm not telling y'all this to make me sound like I'm some guru. That's how stupid I was. Even though I knew all this, I didn't care because I didn't care whose lives I demolished. I didn't care about this, that, the other. After 3 years sober, I moved back to Louisiana. I just have to give this background to be with my parents. I'd taken the 12 steps in. I'd recovered. I was all about my dad got sick. I was going to give back this, and this. Okay, so when he passed away of cancer after 5 months of horrible suffering, I kept with my program. I kept doing what I was supposed to do. And I'll never forget the day that I finally, after he had passed away, I threw myself on my kitchen floor and I said, you know what? It's not so much that you took my dad, but it's the way you did it. And I was talking directly to God, and I said some really nasty things to God, including the F word, and I don't ever want anything to do with you ever again. You have failed me. Not only have you taken the most important person in my lifetime, but the way that of course, I'm making it about me, right? And here I go. That's the way I did every situation in my life. Here I'm watching my dad die. It seemed like 500 years. It was 5 months from the time he got sick to the time he passed away. But me having to watch him, okay, me, having to watch. How about this man who's suffering? Okay, did the same thing in every aspect of my life. I had a cousin who died of alcoholism, just fell dead in an airport because of his blood alcohol level. I was planning to go to his funeral. I'm making that all about me, like, oh my God, how am I going to take this? How am I going to be able to live through this? How am I going? Me. Everything was me. I was the most selfish, self-centered, dishonest, inconsiderate, dissatisfied, sinister. Let me see how I can get your ass before you get mine. Filing for divorce from a detox facility. I mean, that's a classic case of let me get you before you get me. Because I knew what was probably going to happen when I got out of there. And furthermore, my husband of 23 years had said, oh, you'll never have the balls to divorce me. Well, tell an alcoholic they'll never have the nerve. Forget my kids, forget anything that had to do with this is about me. And I remember telling him, you know what, dude, I am going to divorce you. And guess what? I'm going to take half of our money. I don't care if it's $10, 10,000, 10 million, half of it's mine. And maybe more if I play my cards right. I remember saying that. So getting back to the 4th step, I had done quite a few 4 steps throughout my career of this. And had done other people's 4 steps, frighteningly enough. How that first girl, oh my God, I'll never forget what a pitiful job I did of doing her 5th step. God help her. But anyway, I don't down the sheets. I've always used those sheets for years and years. Throughout this in and out of sobriety, I'd use those sheets. Check off. So the first time I'm in Maggie's, my mind is so fixated on what's outside of those walls. I just want to get the hell out so I can just really let people have it that have screwed me over. 1 in particular, 2 in particular. So the first time I'm at Maggie's, I'm there and I'm just, all I can think about is what's going on the outside of the walls of the Magdalen House. So when it comes time for me to do my 5th step, I'm just checking things off. Yes, I was selfish, self-centered, dishonest, inconsiderate, self-seeking, all these things, not even absorbing a bit of it. Just wanting to get up and get out of there. And I remember Rachel saying to me something to the tune of sober living. And I was like, see ya. I got a condo I've got to get to. I've got this, I've got that, I've got the other. So away I go, and needless to say, during that 6 months, my life turned into the biggest shit show it has ever been. Just the progression of this disease, you guys. But going back to the 4 steps. So when I'm in Maggie's the second time, God gifted me this somehow thing I had never had before, but it was just a blank mind. I don't know if it's alcohol soaked brain or what, but I was just like blank. Like I wasn't concerned about anything on the outside. My oldest son, bless his heart, the only one in the world who was still speaking to me and who stood by me at every turn, was taking care of everything on the outside. I just had to be there. I just had to be there. I mean, thank God I was able to be there. They took me back, you know. I was totally drinking against my will. If my eyes were open, I was drinking. I just vaguely remember the paramedics, my son, and the police being at my apartment, and I had a .6 blood alcohol level when I got to the hospital, still sitting up talking. So I'm going back to, I'm at Maggie's. Okay, I was going to do 30 days. Well, couldn't get in 30 days. I drank, of course, after spending a week in Parkland. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to work. This is like, I have to get into some kind of holding tank. So I end up at Maggie's. I'm begging and pleading, and I get back into Maggie's. And so there I am, blank slate, like walking around like I know nothing of this book. And I unfortunately called myself knowing a lot. Now, knowing the book and doing the book are two different things. I could be drunk as Cooter Brown and tell you on page blah, 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 it says blah, 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 you know. But what the hell, really? So when I was in Maggie's the second time, I just had this sort of blank slate. And I had someone who had asked to sponsor me before I got shit faced again. And I called her on my way. I don't even know where, but I was on my way to yet a third or fourth hospital in a month. I don't know anything about that. I just remember calling her and asking her if she would still be my sponsor, that I had screwed up over and over and over again, and help. And she said, well, yeah, just like that. And I was like, you know, again, oh, it's about me, you know, poor me. I'm so horrible and terrible, and this person's still willing to take me on. And she did. Difference being, back to your question, we did this 4th step out of the book. I didn't use the sheets. I don't know how that came about. I didn't ask, let me do this out of the book. I'd never done it out of the book before. I knew nothing of doing it out of the book. I'd never done anyone else's out of the book. No one else had ever done mine out of the book. So I'm like, well, shit, this looks like a lot more work, but I'll do it, you know? So it's pen to paper. So I'm doing this pen to paper, and I'm writing out all these things, and I'm so seeing a much better, more accurate, I guess, view of myself, that I went through my alcoholism, the tornado roaring through everyone's life, and then waking up somehow out of whatever it was I had created and wondering, what the hell is wrong with you? And I don't mean me, I mean the other people. What is wrong with you? You're supposed to feel sorry for me. You're supposed to be helping me. You're supposed to be listening to how terrible my life is and how I want to kill myself. I never really, and I mean, intentionally tried, but dear God, a .6 blood alcohol level is pretty close. So I say that with, I really got to this place where everybody should be serving me because I'm the sick one. I'm the weak one. I'm the poor, pitiful me. And I think it says somewhere in the 12 and 12, the weak one, something about either, and I don't know a lot about the 12 and 12, but I've really tried to use that tool this go around. It's really helped me. But it says something in there about how the weak one is left alone and afraid because the stronger one either flees or dies. So mine was dying, which was my dad, and fleeing was people that just could not get me, did not get how they were put on this earth to serve me. It was everything. I was always like, but I had all these good intentions, in my mind. I was going to be this, this, and this, and this. But in reality, hello, what a delusion. I wasn't this, 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 and this. I was this, that, and that, and talk about things that like hit you right between the eyes. Like I can remember my youngest daughter, who's not alcoholic, and she said to me, Mom, I was so drunk over the phone with her, but I remember the conversation of her telling me, you're banned from my wedding. I can't stand you. Every time you get my trust up, which this is something that says in the book, she's not alcoholic, but she described it to a T. Whenever you build my trust up, Mom, you just tear it all down. And I cannot trust you. I don't want to be around you. I don't want anything to do with you. And blah, 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 blah. Well, normally I would have said, how dare you, after everything I've done for you, and tried to weasel my way back into some type of, way that I'm going to go to her wedding. But in my drunken stupor, I just said, you're right. You're right. I hung up the phone. That was that. But going back to this fifth step, I will say the only time I tried to arm wrestle with my sponsor was when she said, you're playing God. And I'm like, what? I was like, what an insult. How dare you? I grew up in church. I never thought I was God. I never, ever in my whole entire life thought was so bold as to think that I was God. Well, hell's bells. Look at the way I've been living my life. I was playing God, and so she so graciously went back through, which I have right here, my little 2 notebook long court stuff of all the ways in my life. And I'm like, oh my God, that was like right smack between the eyes. So then I understood the part where it said, first of all, we had to quit playing God. It didn't work. I'm like, holy shit. I would have fought with her till doomsday. But somehow at that moment in time, I really got the big picture that, yes, I had been playing God. Hell, I mean, I might as well have said I thought I was God. The way I wanted you to do this, and this, and I'm trying to run the show. I'm trying to fit all these little pieces over here long enough to where I can do this over here, and then this falls apart. So let me see if I can get that back together. That was a constant. And another thing that she wrote over and over again was how unavailable I was. Well, how dare you? I was not unavailable. I was available. I may have been unconscious, but I was available. I mean, all these things that had never been pointed out to me in such like, let me hit you straight between the eyes. I was intolerable. I was judgmental, completely dishonest, but I could always rationalize the dishonesty if it served me, If the dishonesty served me, I could pretty much rationalize that as well. I was put myself in harm's way, blah, blah, blah. But the biggie that I went back and I was like, manipulate? No, I never manipulate. She stopped me. Wait a minute. Whoa, sister. Didn't you come back to Maggie's this time telling your son that you would stay at Maggie's and you go for 30 days and then you get an apartment? I'm like, well, yeah, but that was our agreement. She's like, no, I don't think so. I think that was pretty much manipulation on your part. I went, oh God, yeah. So then it like all came back to me, all these ways that I manipulated. And then, I don't know if any of y'all can like relate to this, but when I would manipulate and get away with it, instead of feeling like, oh my God, I would be like, yes, I am so good. I am so good. I'm so good at this. And one thing she pointed out to me was that I was a martyr. Well, I really like that because I don't know much of anything about the Bible. My mother can recite it line by line, but not me. I don't know. And I'm not proud of it. I just don't. But it's a spiritual program for me. It's not a religious program. So I'm thinking somewhere in the back of my mind during grade school, I remember martyr being something about someone who sacrificed himself for the good of others or some such. So I'm thinking that that's what she must mean. I'm a martyr because I am always sacrifice myself trying to help, for the good of whatever, my kids, my family, mankind, whoever. And so she said, why don't you look that one up? So I look it up and I'm like, oh my God, y'all, this was like the biggest slap in the face of all, of end all be all. Okay, victim complex. The martyr complex is a victim complex. Desires the feeling of being a martyr for their own sake, seeking out suffering or persecution because it either feeds a psychological need or a desire to avoid responsibility. That was the story of my life. I was always trying to avoid responsibility. Let someone else do it for me. Let someone else do it for me until guess what? Nobody was there to do it for me anymore. It was me and God, and that was pretty much it. So I had to realize that I had to give it up. In that third step prayer, I remember praying. I don't remember feeling any, but I remember thinking, okay, this is it. This is it because I am a shit show and I can't fix me. I've tried. My sponsor used to tell me things. I would say, well, I'm trying to figure this out. And it wasn't necessarily this. It could be any situation. She would say, stop it. You can't fix anything with your mind. You cannot do it. You have to have God's help in all things. And so I have to be willing in all things to ask God for help and guidance and give it. And I used to do this, well, and I still do. I can't say I used to. I still do this tug of war thing with God sometimes. But how does that serve me? All that does is get me all tangled up and messed up. When I can say, God, take this. And there's a lot of times in my early sobriety, all I did was pray. I knew of nothing else to do. I had never prayed on my knees before, but I said, holy, you know what? I've got to do everything contrary to what I want to do. I don't want to get on my knees. I'm old. It hurts my knees. I have a hard time getting up, whatever. Well, I sure didn't have a hard time trying to find the nearest liquor store or having it brought to me or whatever else I had to figure out how to do, how to stay obliterated, how to stay in full flight from reality. And believe me, I was in full flight from reality. And so at this point, all but one human had fled me. My dad had died. And so there I was for week one. And my son, bless his heart, I mean, he was not I hate this word enabler, but he wasn't doing that. He was just saying, Mom, I love you. I'll do whatever I can to help. Now, granted, this kid was 12 the first time I went to treatment. When I got sober, September 12th of 2019, he was 33 years old. So how do you think that kid's life was? So, yeah, my fourth step pretty much, I was willing to believe she could have told me. Now that I look back and look at it in black and white, she could have told me I had four heads. And I would have said, okay, I have four heads. So how do I get back to one? What do I do? I will pray all day. I prayed every single day. God, I don't know what this is. God removed the obsession to drink alcohol from me while I was in Maggie's. I think it's because I was in such an ending stage of this crap, this horrible disease that we call alcoholism. I think that God just finally said, listen, bitch, if I don't take this from you now, you are never, ever, ever going to get this. So here you go. I'm doing you a favor. Now, why don't you do something? And so I did. And I looked at the girl sitting next to me a week into Maggie's the second time, which, by the way, I'd again said, oh, no, I'm not going to sober living. Did it a year in Louisiana. Not doing that again. After a week in Maggie's, I looked at this girl next to me and I said, oh, my God, if I don't go to sober living, I'm going to die. And then I was mad because I said it out loud because I was like, oh, shit, now I'm stuck. I have to go to sober living because I've said it out loud. But you know what? It was the best damn thing that God ever could have done for me. I didn't do it. I was going to go back to wherever it was, which, by the way, at this point, going back to the last time was my condominium. This time, me saying, I'm going to go home. And then I go, wait, home. What's home? Oh, it's a storage unit. You can't even open because it's got everything I've ever owned in my entire, at this point, 59 years in it. It doesn't even have room for me. So you know what? No, stop deluding yourself, honey. You have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to go. So this idea that you're choosing to go to sober living or you got some aha moment is really bullshit. Because I had nowhere to go. Well, who knows? I remember one time during my trying to get sober, my mother had decided that I was going to go to a 2-year faith-based program. And I said, no. And so I had decided, now here I am, like 50 something years old. How can my mother make me do anything? But I'm thinking my mother can make me do this. So I'm thinking, well, you know what? That's just fine. In my head, I'm thinking, that's just fine. I will take her little plane ticket and I will fly to somewhere in East BFE, Georgia for 2 years. And you know what? Guess what? The joke's going to be on her. Because when I get off the plane, I'm going to the nearest bridge. And I'm going to sit under that bridge for however long it takes. I mean, that was how sick I was. I was going to choose living under a bridge and drinking and whatever else, mostly drinking, instead of going to somewhere where I would have at least had a roof over my head. I would have had food. And I'm sure I could have, they weren't going to kidnap me for 2 years, but that's where my mind was. My mind was so fixated on I was going to do what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, when I wanted to do it, and to hell with everybody else in my life, that's where my mind went. But this last fifth step, I got out of it, and I was like, okay, I can either take the rest of these steps and get free of this shit and start doing what I'm supposed to be doing, which is to be of maximum service to God and people about me, which, dear God, I'm sure I'm not alone in wondering, I would wake up day in and day out. Why am I still here? What purpose could I possibly be serving on this earth? And when I saw that in the book, I thought, finally, there is something. All I wanted to be was a good mother. Were there times I was a good mother? Yes. Were there more times that I was not a good mother? Yes. So all these things and these ideas, these little plans and designs I had for myself, in my fifth step, I saw who I was and what I was, and then was told what I needed to do to be free of this monster that I had become. Because I was a monster. I could do any kind of, and I'm sure I'm not alone, any selfish, steal people's shit, steal their this, do their this, steal their credit cards, lie about this with a straight face, knowing I was lying, and then be mad at you because you didn't believe me. Be mad at you knowing I was telling you a bald-faced lie and you didn't believe me. I guess I had deluded myself somehow into believing it was the truth. I don't know. So, this last time, it was just like, it wasn't never going to be able to see my grandchild that stopped me. It wasn't not going to my daughter's wedding that stopped me. It wasn't having a recovered alcoholic daughter that hated my guts. It wasn't having a school teacher son who has a heart of gold, who was just at his wits' end. It was none of those things. None of those consequences ever were going to stop. It had to be something between my higher power and myself that finally said, enough is enough. This is who you are. This is who you become. Looking at this person on paper sucks, but it's the truth. So now what do I do? And taking direction from my sponsor when I didn't want to, when she really pissed me off. I called her going to my daughter's rehearsal dinner, scared to death. I'm taking an Uber to McKinney. I'm so scared. I'm a few months sober. My heart's palpitating. I couldn't even drive because I was so afraid to drive to McKinney. I call her and she says, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you called." And I'm crying. It's Rosie, by the way. And I said, "Please help me. Tell me something. I'm so scared." She goes, "I'm so glad you called. So I'm waiting on this moment of, honey, it's going to be okay." And she says, "So glad you called. I'm waiting. I'm going to see people who haven't seen me in 3 years who hate my guts." And she says, "I'm so glad you called. I'm going to need you to tell your story on Sunday at Maggie's. I'll talk to you later. Bye." I hated that woman. At that point, I hated that woman, but I knew she was telling me something that I needed to hear and do. And so as much as I cursed her, I just said, well, okay. So there I was, me and God, trying to figure out, what the hell am I going to do during these last 2 hours? Well, who cared? We have this I had this grandiose idea that everywhere I walked in, everybody was looking at me and thinking about me. Nobody gave a damn about me. My daughter was getting married, So sorry, Steph, I went on another one of my tangents. What else can I answer for you in the next 5 minutes?
I love you so much. You're so funny. But I also want to say too that line in the 12 and 12 about the weak one being left alone because everyone flees or dies. Like a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, I wrote this new inventory and I had never read the 4-step out of the 12 and 12. And I read that and I was like, this is me. Oh my God. And so I've never had anyone else talk about that. So I just wanted to share that because it was such a profound moment for me, even
Same.
3 or 4 years.
I mean, I was like, oh my God, this is me. I have used. And then once I use people up, they either leave or they die. And then there's the weak one for me. Now what do I do?
Well, you are not that person that you were describing on your fist up today. And so that speaks so much value to the psychic change that occurs, because what I just see is someone who just radiates so much joy and love. And, when Elizabeth was on, how highly she spoke of you. And so I would just love it if you would just talk to us about the woman that you are today and what God has done in your life.
Well, I will say this. I don't depend on myself for much of anything anymore. As far as joy, you guys, people talk about joy. I'm going to be like, okay, does that mean happy? Well, I'm never happy, so throw that one out the door. But I tell you what, I've never known joy such as when I held that baby, that grandbaby of mine. That granted, I was like, well, I'll never meet him. Okay. You know, when I hold that baby now and we dance to the Beach Boys and he has his head on here, he's not falling asleep. This is the way we dance. And he puts one arm around my shoulder and the other arm around my neck and he's patting my shoulder. And it's like, I just have the most joy, like everything is right and good in this world. And I'm sure that you have that same with your baby stuff. I know you've been through a lot too, or a lot in sobriety. I can't. But just holding on to those moments of joy and gratitude and I love sponsoring and doing my JFlag best, to help another woman. And you can't fail at the answers in the book. I try to not give my answer because my answer is usually pretty crazy and all over the place. I love working with women. I love working with women when I see the light bulb come on. This is like what gives me the just a huge amount of just joy and gratitude, and mostly to God. Like, what am I doing helping someone else? Sometimes I go back to that. Like, I mean, but once you have once I had that spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. It was a time in my life that I thought the 12 steps said, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of going to a bunch of AA meetings. Now, AA meetings are important, don't get me wrong, but as a result of these steps, and the steps are just so beautiful and so masterfully laid out. I do use the 12 and 12 now, like here the last few months. I had to use it on when I got in a tangle with myself about a 10 step, over a 10 step. And I talked to my sponsor or maybe had prayed about it and couldn't get a hold of her, read about it in the 12 and 12. I don't know, but for some reason that chapter on that 10 step is really pretty cool. So today I don't dread waking up in the morning. I don't cry. I don't shake and shiver and wonder where my next drink's going to be. Instead of, I thank God for another day. I thank God that I do have a relationship with my family. That certainly, totally was left up to God, because either way, I knew I was going to be okay. Either way, I knew that I was going to be okay because I knew that I had God. And that's really, I know as corny as it might seem and as wrecked up as my life was, once I got to a point where, okay, this is not between, and Teresa always tells me, she's my sponsor now, that, this amends you're thinking is between you and this person is not between you and this person. It's between you and your relationship with God and clearing that pathway to God. So whatever you have going on that you think, oh, what if they say that? Who cares what they say? You're taking responsibility for your part, and all that is clear your relationship, your pathway to God. What they say back to you is of none of your concern, other than should they say, answer the question, what can I do to make it better? So today I'm happy. I have friends, real friends. I know that sounds stupid, but it was always like, I was the person who was always the good Samaritan drunk. Let me take in every drunk person and their drunk boyfriend and everybody else they know, who's doing who knows what. And let me fix you. You can come and live with me for free because I'm such a good person. And let me see how that works out. Well, that never quite worked out for me, So all I see in that was me trying to get some kind of validation, God knows what, from some kind of bullshit thing of me trying to help somebody else. So today, If there's anything I can do or say, I try to be available to my sponsees. But, we all have so much in common. We all have such a common bond. And I will say this, my hat goes off to you young mothers who are able to do this thing sober. I marvel at you. I commend you. I praise you. I will encourage you because that was something I was never able to do on a consistent basis. Never, ever. So God bless you all. I love every one of you. Steph, sorry, as usual, I yacked up an hour, but any parting questions from you?
Yes. Thank you. My final question is if you could leave us with one takeaway, one piece of direction or whatever thought that you'd want to leave us with, what would that be?
For me, I guess I would just say for me, I can just say for me, it was never stop praying, no matter how low you are, no matter how high you are, no matter how, everything's coming up roses. You just got I got the job of my dreams, by the way. And when it was time for me to start that job, I was in loose terror. So that's just an aside. So no matter how, because I got the job, okay, right? Next thing I know, I'm incarcerated. I'm just saying, no matter how big or how small, like my mom fell and broke her shoulder recently, and it turned out, oh my God, she didn't have to have surgery. So that would have been something in my past. I would have just been like, oh, great, yay, no surgery. I get on my knees a lot. If I'm desperate, I get on my knees. If I'm grateful, I get on my knees. If I'm whatever, I get on my knees. And a lot of times, like I said earlier, my mind can end up being a washing machine on spin again. And I don't know what is it in there that needs God to take out and do something with. I don't know, but he does, or she, or it, or whoever. Harriet calls her God a she. Just take whatever that is, God, because I can't do this anymore. And I swear every single time, whatever that is, it works. So I do try to pray a lot. It doesn't have to be these and nows and 20-minute prayers. A lot of times it's just, dear God, thank you. Thank you. I try not to stay in morbid reflection because what good is that going to do me anyway? Do I wish things could have been different for my kids? Of course I do. But that is not going to help me or serve me in helping another woman. So I guess that's answered your question. Just stay in touch. Mostly stay in touch with your higher power. That has been a lifesaver for me. I used to stay in touch just long enough to get what I wanted. And then, poof, I was off to something else. But I really don't live my life. I try not to, and I stay in touch with people and just try to be honest with them. I used to want to call you and tell you what a pretty little picture my life was, but I had this one little thing, and it was this bitch over here that wouldn't do what I said she needed to do. And, now I'm calling people like Carrie and saying, well, maybe it does have a little of that in there, Carrie, but for the most part, it's like when Teresa tells me the truth about myself, I end that conversation with, thank you. That's exactly what I needed. Instead of like, how dare you, or, that's not me. I want to hear that. I want to hear her tell me that I'm selfish and self-centered and know that that's the truth. And she's not telling me to be mean. She's telling me that because she's trying to help me stay sober and become a better sober woman and a better sober child of God. So.
Well, thank you so much, Vicki. You have inspired me to get on my knees after the call and thank God for my sobriety and for you all.
I love you, ladies, so much. Everyone, y'all.
You guys have a wonderful.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry my yacker kept going, but
you're so great.
Nothing happens. I love you, ladies. Y'all have a wonderful day.
We hope you've enjoyed this From the Vault re-release of the Magdalen House podcast. Tune in every first and third Wednesday for a new release from one of our 3 podcast series. To learn more about the Magdalen House and the services we offer, visit magdalenhouse.org or follow us on your favorite social media channels by searching for the Magdalen House.